You know that feeling when you're at Ross and you find the best gifts for way less? Like brand name sweaters, the coolest kids' toys, and plush dog beds? Get that feeling with every gift and save 20 to 60% off other retailers' prices. At Ross, yes, for less.
The #1 selling product of its kind with over 20 years of research and innovation. Botox Cosmetic, botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Compost, we all know by now, is very beneficial to plants, houseplants, vegetables, pony packs.
Plus, it's putting to use the waste rather than putting it in a landfill.
Absolutely.
So it's an art, isn't it?
No, it's more like a science.
Yeah.
That's why I guess we had a disagreement over how it was being done.
This is the plaintiff, Scott Yard. He says he built 2 composting receptacles on the defendant's property, and the woman refuses to pay him for his hard work. If that weren't bad enough, she also threw out his valuable tools, a snow shovel and 2 sawhorses. If this woman thinks she can get away with ripping them off, she has another thing coming. Because he's suing her today for the $2,794 he's owed. This is the defendant, Kate Garcia. She says the plaintiff used her property for a pet project and built 3 giant bins for composting for the neighborhood to use. She told him to remove them immediately. He took his sweet time and started using her property as his own private storage area. So she threw them out in the garbage. Owe him? No way. She's accused of not paying up. The defendant has filed a countersuit for $5,230, the cost to fix the side of her damaged house, and punitive damages.
All parties, please use your right hands.
What you are about to witness is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in civil court. Both parties have agreed to drop their claims and have their cases settled here before Judge Marilyn Milian in our forum, the People's Court.
The People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marilyn Milian presiding. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Yard, you are suing Ms. Garcia, who I guess is your neighbor, kind of?
Yes.
For $2,794 that you say she owes you, and you have a counterclaim against him for $5,230 you say he owes you. Let's start with you, Mr. Yard. What happened?
What happened is when I met the defendant, I was working on a fence next door to her property. We started talking about things we had in common and do sustainable living practices. And I've always been on the prowl for open land to set up a composting operation because you can get by with a fairly small amount. And compost, we all know by now, is very beneficial to plants, houseplants, vegetables, pony packs. So,
plus, it's putting to use the waste rather than putting it in a landfill.
Absolutely.
So it's an art, isn't it?
No, it's more like a science.
Yeah.
That's why I guess we had a disagreement over how it was being done.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Right now, I just want to get into, so how long have you been doing it?
40 years.
Okay. So what is it you're looking for when you're composting?
Okay. There's what they call the carbon-nitrogen ratio, and that's the correct balance of greens and browns. Browns meaning dead leaves, trimmings from gardeners. And then you have your greens, which are fresh greens, spinach cuttings, anything from the kitchen.
So what kinds of things were you putting in there?
I was putting in everything that I could get that didn't fall under these categories. And I have a little sign outside of all the bins: no meat, no bones, and then my own was no thorns.
Okay, when you say all the bins, how many bins? Did you have this on other neighbors' places too? Or?
I have in the past. See, what's great about it is you can get a pretty significant amount of waste going into compost just by adjusting the bins. And my bins were 5 feet high, and they were 6 feet across, and that's.
And they're made of chicken wire and
Yes.
2x4s.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long did you have the bins on her property?
I think I had them from April until when they disappeared, which was roughly the first week of September.
Okay. And during that time, the two of you, I've read the text back and forth, and it sounds like you were friends.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. And then and you were taking care of her cat. You were paying him to take care, just a cat, or was there also a dog?
2 fish.
Fish. So you were he was like coming by when you were out of town and
Right.
feeding the fish and feeding the cat, and and everything sounded good. What interested you in the idea of the composting? Had you ever done that before?
I had been taking my kitchen scraps and putting them in a spot in my yard and literally just kind of digging them in. And so, like Scott said, he was working on a project next door, and I was out there seeing what they were doing, and I said, I think I'm going to change this space into like a place for mulching my kitchen scraps. And he lit up. Scott's a professional, and he's passionate about it. And so he started showing, I know all about it. I don't. I know more now, but I use mulching and composting as the same term. But
Okay.
It's not. I'm sure he'll tell you
Right.
it's not.
It's not.
So he's like, I could create a great space back here. I could, you can bring all your kitchen waste, and this would be a good spot. And he agreed with me.
Were you supposed to pay him?
No.
In fact, he specifically said, you don't have to pay me.
Correctly. And I actually
have the things or can get the things, so it was
It's all
2
scrap.
pallets that someone found, chicken wire and 1x4.
Yeah, and I just wanted, because it was like almost like a childlike enthusiasm about the whole thing. And so I actually sent a text. I go, I just want to be clear. Like, I really appreciate it, but I don't have extra funds to pay.
Right, and he said, no
I'm
worries.
literally going to throw my kitchen scraps and bury it right here.
What was the deal then? What was in it for him? Was he going to be able to throw kitchen scraps in there too? Was he going to be able to use the compost?
Nothing was stated as, and so I've asked myself, what would he get out of it other than like being a good Samaritan and helping a neighbor? And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use you as a pet sitter. So I wanted to try to employ him at the odd jobs that I could.
Right.
But this wasn't something I was going to fund.
But was it your understanding that compost bin, we'll call it, was just for your use? No, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking he was going to literally build like a bin that I could just put my stuff in. The ones that I've seen are like little tumblers.
But composting takes continued care. So what was he going to do? Just leave
I was going to do the rest of it.
That's how you thought it was going to be.
Right. I thought it would be.
Is this in any of the texts? No. Clearly you had one thing in your head and he had another.
Correct.
Perhaps in the future, in an endeavor like this, it might be a good idea to put stuff in writing, even if the writing is a text or an email.
Correct.
Right.
As it evolved, I saw that I was curious. I'm like, okay, he's super creative. It's nothing I've ever seen before. It kind of started growing, and it had this one bin and this deck, and he was getting a runoff product that he found valuable. And
what's the runoff product?
I don't know. Oh, that's right. She's probably referring to leachate.
Yeah.
Which is the liquid that comes off of a pile or a row of compost material.
And what's that liquid? It's rich in what?
It's rich in nutrients. It's not toxic. You can pour it right back onto your plants that are growing, or what I usually do is just pour it right back into the compost bin and have it working through the existing compost.
Okay. And so, go on.
So I was curious now because I'd never seen anything like this. I didn't know about the runoff product. I actually poured some of it on one of my houseplants, and I murdered it. I think it was too rich, or I don't know.
Maybe you put too much or something.
I'm just not a green thumb. I give it my best shot.
No, I'm getting that. All right. So, go on.
And so I was curious about how the end game was. I'm like, how does this progress? There was one bin. Scott said, I think it'll take about 6 weeks and we can turn it over and it'll be soil. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I was curious, but I was busy. I was trying to get clients. And so I just kind of let him do his thing and was waiting for it to mature. Well, one day I come home and it's now 3 bins, and my whole driveway there was boards down, and he was bringing other people's waste in, or not waste, but greenery. I'm like, okay, now this is turning into something I didn't expect to have like other people's yard waste coming into my home. And now there's 3 giant bins. And then I brought my kitchen scraps one day to bring out there, and he's put these lids on it that were, and like had 80 pounds of weight on them. And I'm like, oh, I can't even add, so I'd like leave my bowl there. And the bowl would sit there and get funky for a few days. It just was not working.
Did you mention it to him? Like, I'd like to be able to use it?
Yeah, I'm like, I can't, so I just left it for him to do. I don't even know if those made it in. I think they did. I don't know. The bowl would be empty. Sometimes I threw it away because it got nasty. It just wasn't working. For me, it was just not working.
So it had been there for how long when you decided this has got to go?
I think by the mid-June, I was like, this isn't right. I mean,
it had been there since when?
April-ish. Like he
All right,
built it.
so how do you tell him, hey, I don't think this is working? What do you say?
Yeah, that was the thing. I was kind of hesitant. At that point, I had been getting people coming and telling me stories about some of the history and like, is he been possessive over his stuff? And there was an incident where I cleaned up all of his tools, and Scott came, he's like, you've been touching my stuff? And I'm like, well, it was everywhere. It's leaning on gas pipes. It's on the, it's in the pathway. I'm cleaning up. He's like, oh, like aggravated with me. I was like, okay. It was almost like a land grab. I felt like suddenly it became his space, and it was his stuff. Okay. And I was infiltrating on my own property. I was infiltrating.
Okay, so
on his
how
things.
did you tell him you got to go? How did you say it?
First, I said, we're going to have to wrap this up. Back up. I was over it, right? And I'm like, okay, there's 3 bins. It's going to need some time. I'm just going to give it a couple weeks. We needed to move the deck. Scott had covered an area that was, the park had come in and said, you need to move that. The gas company guy, meter reader, was like, this is really dangerous around these pipes. This has all got to come down. So I'm like, so I told Scott, we need to move the deck. He moved it a bit.
They didn't say it had to come down. They said you had to separate it so he could have access to it, right?
The park manager said that. The gas company said, these are all above ground gas pipes. These bins are these towering bins with boulders and weights and 5-gallon buckets filled with water. If they toppled over, they would hit.
Okay.
These. So they were like,
and anyway, it's your property. You can decide whatever you want.
Exactly.
You don't need somebody else to tell you it's dangerous. But
exactly at that point,
I'm going to ask you for the 3rd time. When do you finally break it to him that you want it off? That's
was after his injury. When he
Which is when?
The second week of July. He tells me he's gotten a bike accident. He wanted me to check his head to see if he had a concussion, and I'm like, I'm not going to touch your head, and I'm not qualified. You need to go to the doctor. He went to the ER. He had shared with me he had a brain bleed, and they was waiting for a second scan and didn't want to wait, so he left the ER. He's telling me this, and I'm like, Scott, you can't. I said, this has got to come down. We're going to wrap this up. In the next couple of weeks, this whole thing's got to come down.
Because now you're worried about his mental capacity and his judgment?
It's right. He's not taking care of himself.
What happened? What kind of accident did you have?
It was a bicycle accident, and I fell on my head, and I had a concussion, and I was running around doing my normal everyday things for over a month before I realized I took myself to the hospital. Actually, I asked her to take me to the hospital, and she said no. But I got there, and they said, you have a hematoma, and we have to operate on you right away. So I was operated on the 15th of August.
That was how long after the fall?
35 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Head injuries are something that need to be tended to. You can't mess with that.
Thank you for telling me.
Yeah, I wish we'd met earlier.
Right.
Well,
just a moment, ma'am. All right. So what did they do? Release the pressure?
No. They cut my hair. They made an incision. They have a special tool they stick in there.
A drill?
Took it out and then sewed me up.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. So you hear about the surgery.
Well, so he knew about the brain bleed the second week of July. I said, have you talked to your mom? Have you talked to your girlfriend? Have you told these people what's going on? I didn't get a straight answer back. So it took, every time I saw him, I'm like, you have to get that checked out. You can't have, because he had pointed to the front of his brain saying there's a brain bleed here. I'm like, Scott, that's your frontal lobe. You can't, I even irritated him a little bit and said, you know what this operates? It's like your decision making. It was just like, you can't walk around. He'd go through points where he was cognizant and then not so cognizant. It was odd.
How so not so cognizant?
Especially the time when he came to my door, he was asking me to dress him.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. He had come to my door, and he was asking me, his shirt was buttoned all cattywamped, like the buttons were all in the wrong holes. It's 7 o'clock at night, and he's asking me, can you button up my shirt? And I'm like, what's going on, Scott? Like, why can't you button your own shirt? And at that point, I could smell alcohol. And I'd asked if he'd been drinking. He said, yeah, which is not a big deal. We live in it's whatever. But I said, unbutton your shirt. I just watched him, and he lifted up his hand, and his left hand was all swollen and road rashed, like. And I said, what happened to your hand? Because you could barely move his hand. His other hand was fine. And I said, what happened? He's like, I crashed on my bike again.
Is this a motorcycle or is this a bicycle?
Bicycle. I asked him if I'm like, where's your mom? Where's your girlfriend? That was like my go-to.
Did you know the mom and girlfriend?
I knew his mom. I know his mom.
Did you ever communicate with his mom and tell her I'm concerned?
Yes, I had in the park. And she had said during that 3-4 week time.
Before the surgery?
Yeah, they from the time he had gone to the ER and not gone back, that they were working on paperwork to get him in to see a neurologist. And I can understand, I mean, I don't know. Personally, I would have rushed.
Everybody's playing with fire here. All right, so in any event, they operate. Oh, okay. How are you doing? Are you good?
Now I am.
Great, that's what I meant. Like, how are you doing now after the surgery?
I'm here.
Okay. All right, so now you end up telling him, I need you to take your stuff off. How is it that you tell him? By text, in person? How is it you tell him?
In person, before his surgery, after his accident, before his surgery, in the middle of that, I say, we need to wrap this up. This needs to come down, and it's a verbal conversation to wrap everything up. There is a text I have in there. On the 26th of August, I think I finally say, I'm taking matters into my own hands. I'm not waiting for Scott. Because Scott also released himself from the hospital AMA, against medical advice. I saw him a day after his surgery, and he'd been swimming in the pool and riding his bike. I'm like, didn't you just have brain surgery? You shouldn't be swimming in a pool. And he's like, I released myself. They shaved too much hair. They said and the incision's way too big. I was just, he was reckless.
Okay. It's your land, and you don't even need a reason. But I hear your reasons, and I understand what you're saying.
I know how passionate he was about it.
Right.
And it was meaningful to him.
Okay, here's the text on August 26. Hi, Scott. I hope you're healing well. I want to let you know I am working on the mulch and beginning to break down the bins. I will let you know when you can come by and pick your things up. Oh, gee, thanks. Did you really think I was going to abandon everything on you? No, that's not what I think. As I had stated before you had your surgery, I wanted to break down this process and use the space for something better suited for it. To which you respond, what could possibly be better suited and better all around for the parties at issue than a highly effective and streamlined composting operation, especially in such a restricted space? To which she answers, a garden. Because really, it is her choice, right? And you say, a garden. Yes, I could see a garden in the area. And a good garden is going to need and benefit from thick layers of what? Compost. And let's be candid here. What difference, if any, is an extra few days to a week delay going to make to a garden that will be planted and growing for years? Why were you saying that? Like, what was it you thought she was saying to you?
Because she was all of a sudden in a hurry to get me out of there.
Right.
Plain and simple.
So, but what if she waited a few days or a week? What would that give you time to do? That's what I'm trying.
Number one, I could be a little more recovered, and we're talking only maybe 10 days after my surgery.
Right.
I was a wreck for a couple of months.
Were you swimming and riding your bike the day after your surgery?
To get to the pool from where I live, I rode my bike over.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be in the pool the day after the surgery either. You know, maybe you should walk, and if you can't, then maybe you shouldn't be back on the bike where you got the injury.
It was all new territory to me. I'd never had a concussion.
I'm sure the doctors told you need to take it easy. You just had brain surgery.
They did. And if they
did you think taking it easy meant getting back on the bike?
We didn't discuss that.
Oh, come on, you know. Was your girlfriend and your mom giving you grief?
No, I don't know.
Did your girlfriend and your mom tell you, for God's sake, don't get on the bike?
Yeah,
you just had surgery.
It upset my mother.
Yeah.
But she didn't know until she was told.
All right.
Okay, and by the way,
it's brain surgery. What needs saying?
This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Looking to escape all the festive chaos? Turn holiday hecticness into harmony with Heyday, the mobile game that helps you harvest calm, one crop at a time. Reclaim your me time. Relax, decorate, and enjoy farming bliss as you tend to your animals and harvest crops as part of a welcoming, stress-free community. Join over 20 million players. Just tap or click on the banner now to download Heyday for free today.
Come to me.
Focus Features invites you to succumb to the darkness.
Nosferatu.
From director Robert Eggers comes a masterpiece of horror.
He is coming. This creature is a force more powerful than evil. It is death itself.
Nosferatu. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Special engagements in Dolby and IMAX.
Okay. The accident happened on July 8th.
Right.
Okay, the surgery was August 15th.
Right. On August 26th, she texts you this, and you're like, why can't you wait a few days? Because what? You wanted to take it apart yourself?
Exactly.
Okay.
That was one reason.
Okay. Kate, I'll be over in the next couple of days to break it down and take away the compost operation. I appreciate any contribution you have put in, but I wish you could have just waited until I was ready, willing, and able, especially considering the restricted space and the amount of compost and other material. And then she says, Scott, I don't want, I guess she meant you here working so soon after your surgery. I told you I will let you know when you can come by and get your things. Just so we are clear, I don't want you working on my property. It isn't personal, it is practical and safe. I will get all your tools, tarp, wood, and bottles ready for you to grab tomorrow afternoon. Let me ask you a question. Why? What were you worried about?
He was getting, I'm actually kind of nervous of him. His behavior and the way he was talking was getting aggressive, unpredictable, and there's
So you didn't want him on your property at all?
Right, and it had flipped, and I had heard stories about this in
What stories?
My neighbors, so in any neighborhood you have your gossiping, gabbing neighbors. So there's some that was pretty salacious that I just kind of ignored and actually, talked to his mom about. But that Scott has a past of scamming people and taking advantage of people and stealing. And then there was other stuff, I didn't want to give it. I wanted to meet the person and not let other people's.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it just seems salacious.
There's kind of nothing, but you let him in your house constantly when you weren't there to take care of your pets. So I don't think you believed any of the stuff you were hearing.
I didn't, and even if people can eclipse their worst moments, and so I was kind of hoping. I mean, I that's what I do. I rescue things. And it's, bleeding hearts. I realize sometimes attract sharks. So.
But is he a shark or just a guy who wanted to take apart his own stuff without you touching it?
I didn't know. I didn't trust his judgment. At that point, he had a head injury that he had allowed to go untreated for weeks and weeks.
Okay. Let me just say that if it were me, I probably would have waited another week and let you take your own stuff. However, she has the absolute right to decide who she's going to let on her property to do something. Maybe she's worried about liability. Maybe she's worried you're going to get aggressive because you sounded mad in the text. Whatever it is, even if it's not what I would do, it's what she decided to do. Just so we're clear, I don't want you working on my property. It isn't personal. It's practical and safe. I will get all your tools, tarp, wood, and bottles ready for you to grab tomorrow afternoon. Do you want the compost? I was just going to use it in that space. But if you have a place for it and something to put it in, I will work on getting it ready for you to pick up. Kate, kind of hard for me to write and send you a written correspondence when I get my compositions returned as not deliverable. And she says back, I'm not sure why that would happen because I see you texting back and forth. So what was happening?
That's a good question. These texts for about a week were coming back undeliverable.
But they were being delivered.
No, they weren't.
No, look at them.
Okay.
Right, this is from her phone, so she was getting them.
Okay.
Not sure why that would happen. Well, right now you're texting each other like minutes, 1 minute apart. I am aiming for Friday 9/1 to clear out.
Yeah.
I don't understand the issue about not doing any kind of work on your property so fresh from surgery last week, yet you say have all your stuff gone tomorrow. How is that feat expected to happen? That isn't what she said. What she said was, I'll have your stuff ready. So
I'll have it ready.
She said, I never said have all your stuff gone. Is there a place I can drop it off, some of the tools and the other items? After a craniotomy surgery, there are restrictions that limit physical activities. I don't want you working on breaking down the platform. You answer, let's not split hairs. I'll get the place fixed up and in better condition than it was in. Earlier, I was commenting on the fact that you were pushing for me to have my stuff out of there tomorrow, yet you were prohibiting me from doing the work. Tell me, at the risk of being a smartass, how's that going to work? Well, how it's going to work is she was going to break it down, and then you just come pick it up.
But how could I pick it up if it's on her property and she won't let me on her property?
She didn't have a problem with you picking it up. She had a problem with you. She said, tell me when you can pick it up. What she had a problem with was you literally breaking it down. She didn't want you days after brain surgery doing that on her property.
Well, then how was I to get it then?
All you had to do was pick it up. So, and she kept saying, I never said you have to have this. And then she said, is there a place I can drop it off? So that's even easier. Why didn't you just tell her a place she could drop it off?
My mother's house or my girlfriend's house?
I don't know. Where do you live?
Yeah.
Where's your house?
I was staying with my mother at the time.
Okay, so that's your house. Like, why couldn't she just drop it off there? No?
No. Okay.
I'm working at a pace I'm comfortable with, she says. As I've stated before, I will get things ready for you to pick up or I can drop them off. I will be taking care of when, how, who, and when it comes to anything in that space. I understand this situation is upsetting you. I know you don't agree with my choices, but I do ask that you respect them. I never told you get your stuff out of here tomorrow. I did say I will have some of the things ready for you to pick up tomorrow. And then she says, I want to let you know that all your tools and materials are ready for you to pick up. That platform is in 2 pieces on the empty lot next door. Whose lot is that?
It's empty. It's the park's. Park owns it.
Okay, well, how do you know the park isn't going to get rid of 2,
I can tell you that I've had to call them to take stuff away. It's not monitored very well.
Okay, the wire screens and your tools, what kind of tools were they?
They're aluminum sawhorses and also a wide mouth shovel.
Okay. Are at the back of the empty lot behind my fence. This is at 9 p.m.
Yep.
On September 1st. And you had said you were working on September 1st doing it. So by 9:26 p.m., she texts you, I've done it, and it's all back there in the lot next to me. Take it easy. I will chat with you later.
And I got there, and it was all the stuff was gone. There was nothing there.
Well, you got there at 2 o'clock the next day, and you say, where's the compost?
Where's the compost?
You don't say, where's all my stuff?
No.
You say, where's the compost? I knew something was not right, among other things. And she said, I told you I dumped it out in the spot. I asked you if you wanted any of it to let me know, and you never replied. What did you do with the compost? You just kind of laid it out in the area to grow a garden in it?
Yeah, so I ultimately came home that day and saw that his stuff was still there. He's getting increasingly hostile.
Right.
I don't want any reason for him to be near my home at this point.
No, sure, I understand. He's calling you sneaky and a liar. She doesn't want you on her property. What in the world are you talking about? You're a liar, you're a thief. Cute game you play, blocking who you don't want to talk to. She has. Did you ever block him?
No,
Did you block him for periods of time?
Zero. I am
sorry you are struggling. I mean, when you say you're a liar and a thief, she's like, what are you talking about? Like a minute later, she says that. And it's at 10 p.m. at night, so it doesn't strike me as someone who's blocking you because she's answering you at 10 p.m. at night. I am so sorry you are struggling. You are entitled to feel whatever way you choose. Your reality and mine are different. Where do you want your things dropped off? This is after you've already put them next door?
Yeah.
So she's still offering to drop them off. On September 3rd, you send him a text. Where do you want your things dropped off? Doesn't work like that, scammer. You would be littering, dumping on private property. She's literally trying to get you your stuff. Can you drop it? Can I drop it off at your mom's place or your girlfriend's house? Do you want this stuff? I'm very clearly trying to help you. If neither place is open to drop these items off, I will likely put it behind the dumpsters, to which you respond, you. And she responds, any specific items you think I have stolen from you, I want to make sure you get everything. What'd you do with the compost finally?
So if you look in that picture, there's big black hefty bags. Those are filled with compost. You can actually see one broke open and there's some of it coming out.
I can.
But there's the sawhorses.
All your stuff is there for you to pick up. There's several bags of compost of sawhorses. So did you ever pick up your stuff?
I never saw it.
Well, I mean, but she sent you pictures of it and told you where to get it. It was right next door.
Never saw it.
I don't know what that means. Did you go out and look and it wasn't there?
Yes.
When did you go out and look?
That was sometime in September.
Not when she told you. Not on September 4th when she's sending you the pictures. There's a real sneaky bimbo exercise you were compelled to pull off the other night. That's okay, because I will be getting all of it back through legal proceedings. I love doing this type of thing. I've learned so much over the years from short-sighted people like you who have convinced themselves, hey, Scott, why haven't you picked up any of your things? I drove past the recycle bins yesterday. It looks like your stuff is there. So did you move it from where it was to the recycle bins?
Correct. Behind the recycle bins.
Okay. And so this is on September 8th, which is yet another day 7.
I moved it on the 3rd because at that point...
All right, but you're texting him on the 8th to tell him it's still there.
To reply to this sneaky bimbo comment, and I'm like, I drove
past it yesterday, and it's still there. So on the 7th, according to you, it was still there.
Correct.
This is the end of the text after he calls you a bimbo?
Looking for a pickup truck to get just about anything done? Look no further. The Chevy Silverado EV isn't just the most powerful Silverado ever, with next-level towing capability and technology. It also offers game-changing versatility with the available multi-flex midgate and tailgate, which means Silverado EV helps you carry large, bulky, and oddly shaped items up to nearly 11 feet in length. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Visit Chevrolet.com to learn more.
You are suing her. Let's go over what you're suing her for. $2,000 in money owed for labor for 10 weeks. However, you never had an agreement with her to pay you for any of that. So
No, we didn't have
you
an
don't get
agreement.
that. And when you have your stuff on someone else's property and they keep asking you to take it down, you got to take it down. And if you can't take it down because you're physically incapacitated, or she won't let you on her property, then the next arrangement is she takes it down and you pick it up and you take it off. That's what should normally have happened in this endeavor. It's up to her to pull the plug when she wants to. It's not your plug to pull. All right, $150 for saw houses and snow shovel, except for she sent you pictures, and we just went through all the text when she kept going over and over for you to come and get it. Let me drop it off for you. Let me help you. I'm sorry you're struggling, but let me take it. Okay, and then $644, the value of 2 bins of compost. How do you get that figure?
That's the going rate of premium compost. Backyard compost is even more than that. You can get as much as $100 a square yard.
And where can I see proof that the deal you had with her is that you would sell the compost and she would let you run your compost thing on her property and you would get the profit from it? Because I don't see that anywhere in the text back and forth. Right, because it wasn't part of the agreement, so she wouldn't owe you for it.
Right.
Now let's get to the counterclaim. In the counterclaim, you're suing for $5,230. Because gone are the days where you're just trying to get this over with and you're afraid of him. Now you'd like $5,230, which you know is going to make him crazy. So tell me about your $5,230 claim.
Well,
$996 of it is to replace the siding. Why? What happened with the siding?
Where he was working, somehow I don't know, it was a tight space like he admits, and there was a lot of action going on back there, and there was holes punctured in our brand new siding.
And prove to me that it was brand new siding.
You can see the quality of it when you look at where the holes are, you can see it, but the whole park had a renovation done, and everybody got new siding because of the damage that the renovation.
So you didn't pay for it?
No. I didn't pay for it originally.
All right, so it was new siding, and then he damages it, and then you have a quote that says it's $996?
And I've added, that was the first quote. I was trying really hard to get quotes in. People weren't returning calls. And then I got a second one that I gave today, so I don't know if you saw it.
No, I haven't.
That's right.
I
have it right here.
Cases today.
So that I printed it out of here.
For $500, which sounds much more reasonable. You're also suing for $1,440 to prepare for court. Now, on what day would a judge award you more than what you're suing for, in this case now 3 times as much, for preparing to sue for it?
Well, I don't know. I just know my time is valuable to me, and I had to take so much time out of my life. And I know 24 hours is like, I had to eclipse a lot of learning curves trying to figure out how to print text, and so it took a lot of time for me to prepare for this.
Yeah, well, now you know. All right, and then $2,794 in punitive damages for what?
Just because it was malicious. Scott accused me of stealing, and it's clear that I did not steal anything. And in his last text, he wrote, "I love doing this kind of thing," which got me curious. I'm like, what does that mean? I love doing what kind of thing?
Probably filing a lawsuit.
Right. So I went to look up filing lawsuits, and that's not what I've found that he loves to do. He has a history of scamming people.
Meaning?
Meaning he's been convicted of scamming people.
Okay, but what? What was so...
He spent 6 years in prison for a Ponzi scheme. And he apparently... The group he was with and him was like $52 million in reparations that they had to pay.
Is that accurate?
It's somewhat accurate.
Okay. All right, but I don't think this compost plan was a Ponzi scheme.
Not the compost plan.
I don't think he meant to cheat you out of anything. I think he had a distorted view of what his rights were on your property. I do think that, and I think that's your fault because I wouldn't let somebody... without a real clear understanding of everything, do that. You behaved beautifully until this counterclaim. All right, but I do believe that you should be able to get you damaged the siding, right?
Yeah, you know what? Most of the holes were already there. There was one, and that's when I stopped. And it's not brand new siding. You can tell by the sun streaks on each one, every other pane. That was old stuff. It's clearly not brand new.
Now, I see where there's a bunch of white tape covering the damage.
And there should be a text in that group that he says, "Oh, I've got white tape. I can cover it up."
Yeah, I saw that. I don't think he denies that he damaged it.
Right.
But he says that there were other places where it was damaged that he didn't damage it. Like where?
Right next to the red, whatever that is.
Rock?
Yeah. You can see the grass growing up there, and that's where the holes already were. I did the hole off to the left, and it was up. It was up pretty high. That's when I realized that the weed whacker isn't going to work.
I'm going to figure out what I think is fair for a few holes in siding that doesn't look brand new. And I frankly think both quotes are bloated.
Excessive.
I mean, it makes...
I don't disagree.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Well,
okay?
First quote is like, I don't want to do it quote.
On your claim against her, I want to say a few things, Mr. Yard, okay? First of all, I don't think you were trying to scam anybody. I think that this was a situation that you're very passionate about, either a hobby, profession, life goal that you're very passionate about. I think you put a lot of work into it. The problem is that you need to understand that if it's not your land, it's someone else's. They can pick up their marbles and go home. And I don't think you quite grasped that the way you should, and maybe it's because of the head injury and the brain surgery or whatever else, or maybe that's just your personality. It doesn't matter, because not only did she not steal anything from you, she repeatedly tried to give it back to you, and you wouldn't let her drop it off. You not only wouldn't let her bring it to you, you said things like, if you do it, it'll be littering and trespassing, because you were mad. You were mad that she picked up the marbles and took her game. And you don't have that right, and hopefully you kind of realize that throughout, but I think not, maybe, if you filed the lawsuit. So over and over, she kept telling you, this is where it is. Where can I take it to you? Okay, you're not answering that, so this is where I'm putting it. And she did, over and over and over. I don't see it once, I see it over and over and over. She's even gonna deliver it to you, and you're like, if you come and do that, that's littering. And so it's nuts to think that she's gonna owe you any money. Now, ironically, do you owe her any money when I have a situation where you have agreed that you put some holes into her siding? Yes, you're going to owe her money on the counterclaim. Is it going to be $900? No. Is it going to be $500? Also no. I'm going to order him to pay you $100 for whatever damage there was to the siding on his part, on his lawsuit against you, $0. That is my verdict. Good luck to all of you in your endeavors.
Thank you.
So the plaintiff fails to prove his case to the judge, but the defendant does get $100 on her countersuit. She wanted $5,000. So, big difference. Scott Yard is on his way out of. I keep wanting to say Scotland Yard. I don't know why. But let me ask you your reaction to what just happened.
She presented a better case.
She sure did.
Yeah.
And obviously you didn't have any proof that she owed you.
Well,
several thousand.
It's a matter of interpretation. Yeah.
All right. So what happens now?
I'll go home and find another place to compost.
You're still doing it?
Oh, sure.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much. It was a worthy cause, but...
Sure. But I lost.
But you lost.
Oh, well.
I'm so sorry about that. All right.
Are you?
There you go. Okay. Let's see what Ms. Garcia has to say about it. I know you're glad this is over at this point, right?
Yes. Very glad that this is over.
Big headache.
Yeah. This is taking a lot longer than composting.
You think you've learned anything from this?
Yes. Keep my sacred space sacred. You know, I opened up my space to allow somebody to do something, and it backfired. And I'm glad he's passionate about that project, but it's not. I don't want it on my space.
All right. Good. Well, you're entitled. It's your choice. Thank you very much. Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Very good. All right, Harvey. This is interesting. What are your thoughts?
So, Doug, a lot of people may be confused about this because, we've always talked about landlords and tenants where it has to be 30 days notice. Here, there has to be no notice because it's not a landlord-tenant situation. This is not a residential lease or anything like that that does require that kind of notice. This is at will. It can be terminated at any time. And simply, that is exactly what happened.
How long do we have until we can sue someone? We had a very bad contractor 5.5 years ago who took $114,000 and still isn't finished with the job.
Oh, goodness.
Too late?
Well, the concept behind statute of limitations is to not have litigation spring up 20 years after something happened.
where it's impossible to prove or defend.
Right. All of a sudden you're like, well, how am I going to find my records from 20 years ago? Right. So the idea is, and it's different in every state, it's statutory, the legislature decides it, we're going to give you 2 years for this kind of case, 3 years for this, 5 years for this kind of case. Right. So they kind of let you know this is, and you need to know.
And it varies state to state.
And it varies state to state.
An oral breach of contract claim in Alabama is 6 year statute of limitations, but it might be something completely different.
In
it could
another
be 3
state.
years
Right.
or something someplace else.
But having said that, whatever the statute of limitations is, it is. But some things are a continuing case. Like, in other words, if he's still not done, is implying to me that he is still working on it, and just comes with big sporadic spaces.
How do you fix the moment of the breach of the contract?
Because the phrase, exactly, where you fix the moment of the breach, that's a continuing breach that's taking 5.5 years, apparently.
Right.
So she wouldn't be out of gas just because 5.5 years have passed.
Right. So the defendant, builder, whoever did this work, isn't really going to be able to use a statute of limitations defense as a shield to avoid getting sued here.
No. If she can prove that the last time she saw this guy is within the statute of limitations period, then he was continuing to work on it. That gives her the reason for not having filed. She thought it would be resolved.
Right.
We want to encourage that behavior.
And homeowners can sometimes sue outside of contract where the statute of limitations might be broader for torts.
Right, or
like
fraud.
Negligence or fraud, things like that.
Exactly.
Right, and certainly even statutes of limitations can be told for years and years and years. If you build a stairway in my house and then it breaks 15 years later.
Because of something you did 15 years ago that
you
was
can't say, whoa, you can't sue
to me until everything was ripped out, and everybody agrees that this was super negligent, then that is the moment when you knew or should have known, and that is the moment that the clock starts ticking from, not 15 years ago.
Right, exactly. So 5.5 years, boy, that's a long time to wait to get some renovations
It really is.
Oh my God, that's one patient.
I might have gone to court a little sooner.
I think so.